On today's Locked On Senators, it's part 2 of our fan-voted mock draft.
And we continue with our 2024 NHL Draft Prospect Profiles, and we're getting closer and closer to first-round talent, which means we got some exciting prospects today.
We certainly do, and more on today's edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
You're Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome inside episode 1058 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Alongside Brandon Pillar up in the Blue Mountains, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase at Game Time. You can also follow the show on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter, LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. The show is free and available wherever you get podcasts, including on YouTube, where a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to helping the show grow. Today is Friday, May 31st, and Pilsy, we are almost at draft month. The Elite Prospects Draft Guide comes out on Monday, and that is the official start of draft season.
Yeah, that's when we can really start doing our research on all these prospects. And Ross, I'm fired up about draft month because we are going to be at the draft, and Las Vegas, the Sphere, Sens with 2 picks in the first round. It's going to be beautiful.
It's going to be amazing. I've never been to Vegas as an adult, so this is going to be a treat, and I'm really excited. We're going to have a blast at the Sphere. I had a comment on YouTube that I want to acknowledge. Sens fan meetup before the draft. We will get information and love to meet up with fellow Sens fans, whether you're making the trip from Ottawa or elsewhere. The pilgrimage to the draft, which I imagine is one of the coolest atmospheres, where it's all fans of different teams in an event like that. We were going to go to the one in 2020.
Yeah.
Something happened and we couldn't make it.
Yeah, we couldn't make that one.
That little thing called COVID. And then we missed out on Nashville last year, but we're going to make up for it. Red on Roulette's my play this draft weekend. And yeah, looking forward to an amazing time. And I'm looking forward to an amazing part 2 of our mock draft, Pilsy, because this has been such a fun exercise. Almost the worst case scenario for the Ottawa Senators. Do you want to recap here the first 5 picks that we made in our mock draft? I mean, number 1's pretty obvious.
Yeah, I mean, number 1, I think I can get. We'll see if I can do this by memory, Ross. Number 1, San Jose Sharks, Macklin Celebrini. Number
Correct.
2, Chicago Blackhawks, Ivan Demidov. Number 3, Anaheim Ducks, Artyom Levshunov. Number 4, Columbus Blue Jackets, Caden Lindstrom. Number 5, Montreal Canadiens, Tej Aginla. Number 6, the Utah Yeti? Mammoth? Zane Parekh. And the rest you'll have to wait to hear.
Spoiler, it's Sam Dickinson going to the Ottawa Senators with 44% of the vote. Pilsy, I was a little surprised by this, but then you think about it, and it's like long-term having Sanderson and Sam Dickinson. And Dickinson played a little bit of right D, but we've been down that road before. I've been fooled before, so I'm not going to go that far. But I will say that for a projectability standpoint, Sam Dickinson is going to be a top 4 defenseman in the NHL.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, Ross. If you would have shown this to me, I don't know, 3-4 months ago, I would have been like, Sens fans are going to riot not getting a right-hand shot defenseman with the 7th overall pick. However, with a little more insight and information on Sam Dickinson, I think Sens fans would celebrate if the Ottawa Senators had the opportunity to draft him at 7th overall. I mean, this guy has the size, he's got the skating, he's got the skill, he puts up points. Like, there's a lot to like here, and it's especially nice, Ross, when I was going to say one of your top prospects. No, whoever the Sens select at 7th overall will be the top prospect. It's nice to have your top prospect developing and marinating in one of the best developmental places in junior hockey in the London Knights. So I think Sens fans should be stoked about this. And with over 2,000 votes, 44.2% of people think the Ottawa Senators will select Sam Dickinson.
And kind of amazing that even the runner-up, Anton Siliev, 6'7", left shot defenseman. So even though the Senators' organizational need is on the right side among defensemen or a skilled forward, when you get to the way that this mock draft fell with a Ginla off the board, Parekh off the board, Lev Shunov obviously off the board as well, you find yourself in a situation where it's like we are really going at best player available. And I think the fans understood that. The citizens voted in favor of Sam Dickinson. Berkeley Catton coming in third place with 23%. And then we threw in Beckett Seneke, not only because he's an Oshawa general, we know the connection there with Rocco Tullio being a minority owner with the Sens, but his stock is soaring too. He is nasty. He is a very good player. And if that's the name called on draft night, I can get on board with that, because you just have to watch his highlight reel and you'll see the type of player that Seneke is. But I voted Sam Dickinson, Pilsy. How about you?
That's a good question. Let's see where I voted. I voted Siliev.
Whoa!
Looking back on this, and now that's no knock on Sam Dickinson.
Sounds like it.
I think both these guys are pretty close when it comes to how you project their game and the types of players they're going to be and what teams will target them. So, look, I could go either way. I think, though, Ross, that was a couple days ago. That was a couple days ago. I think now, getting a little bit more intimate of a view with Sam Dickinson playing in the Mem Cup, I would lean toward Dickinson.
Oh, he's such a stud. So whichever way the Sens go at 7, it's not going to be a bad pick. But I think for this exercise, it turned out well because it gave Sens fans the thought of like, okay, all the guys who I thought would be available, they weren't. And Sam Dickinson in this mock draft is an Ottawa Senator. Still a day left to vote if you want to go have your say. So that's Sam Dickinson at number 7 to Ottawa. That leaves number 8, and Zeev Buium is going number 8. He wasn't even in the poll because I wanted to do 2 forwards, 2 defensemen. I didn't want to load up on defensemen, especially
left-hand shot.
Could you imagine? Yeah. I should have just put 4 left shot defensemen just to make it kind of funny. But no, in all seriousness, Zeev Buium would be a great pick for Ottawa at number 7 as well. It certainly is a very long list of great options. A smooth skater, so technically sound, getting more and more confident offensively as he spent time at Denver. And I just think he's scratching the surface of what he's going to become as a professional. So I voted for Siliev here because I just think he's best player available from the standpoint of, I would have almost liked to see Siliev at like 4, 5. He's a monster. He's a unicorn in a sense, but I like the pick of Zeev Buium here too.
Yeah, I think Seattle, this is the perfect pick for them. Zeev Buium is kind of an analytical darling. They've got a lot of focus on that in their staff. And I just think they need to start shoring up that defense core with some young talent. They still have a lot of the guys that they drafted in the expansion draft there, and they have a good D-core. But I think it's time to reload that, especially when you look at up the middle. They've got Shane Wright and Matty Beniers there. So I think they're going to go with the defenseman here, and Zeev Buium is a great choice.
So Seattle takes Zeev Buium at number 8. Coming in at number 9, the Calgary Flames select, and this one changed last minute, Pilsy. It was now going to be Berkeley Catton, but when we finished the exercise, we thought it was like a 3% lead for Siliev.
Yep, and it's interesting that it's this close. I think the Flames would be happy with either choice, but I think Siliev is best player available here, and you're looking at a team that just traded away 2 big pieces of their D-core in Tanev and Hanifin, right? So they're going to want to get some more support and some reinforcements on that back end. I think Siliev is the right choice here.
And Siliev's not falling out of the top 10. I just can't see it. I cannot see Anton Siliev being on the board for too long, unless the Russian factor really is a thing. Don't forget, Siliev, not only is he a monster defensively, but he had 11 points, which doesn't sound like a whole heck of a lot, but for an under 18 player, it's the most ever in the KHL. So keep that in mind for Siliev. Yakemchuk finishing in 3rd with 22%. The hometown kid, Calgary hitman, kind of made sense, I thought, here to Calgary, but he's still on the board. At 10th overall, this one, I see it so clearly. Cole Yzerman, Imagine him next to Jack Hughes for the next decade. Like, it just makes sense. He's a shooter. You got a playmaker, USN TDP, all that. I think that Cole Eiserman would be the greatest pick here for the Devils at 10.
Or put him beside Nico Hischier, Ross. Like, there's
Sure.
so many options for him. I think the Devils definitely don't need a centerman, and their decor is pretty stacked, especially when you look at Simon Nemec, and then you've got Dougie Hamilton
Luke Hughes
there as well. Luke Hughes. Yeah. So I think Eiserman is the right choice here. And that team is going to have no issues putting the puck in the back of the net, especially if they add Eiserman.
I agree. 36% of you voted for Cole Eiserman at number 10. At number 11, Berkeley Catton goes here, 51% Pilsy. Buffalo Sabres, like they must have done when Zach Benson was still available to them in the mid-teens, they would be sprinting faster than Berkeley Catton on a 2-on-1 rush down to the podium at the Sphere to pick Berkeley Catton if he's there at 11.
Yeah, I think that's such a good pick. Ross, both you and I were big on Benson, and I think both of us are big on Catton. So it pains us to watch players we love go to rival teams, especially teams that are trying to make the same jump as the Sens. But this is a great pick at 11.
It certainly is. Coming in at number 12 for the Philadelphia Flyers, it's going to be Konsta Helenius. I went with Carter Yekemchuk here. I felt it was kind of a Flyers pick, although they did go right shot defenseman last year with Oliver Bonk. But Helenius, a strong forechecker. I think he would be a nice pick in this range too.
And they could just acquire Jamie Drysdale, right? So they've got young right-hand shot defensemen. I think Helenius is a good, responsible, two-way, maybe even more of a defensive forward that's really going to help all those other skilled players they have and play a more responsible game there.
Certainly. At number 13, Carter Yekemchuk. Majority vote, Pilsy. First time in a while we've had that. 53% want Yekemchuk with Minnesota.
Yeah, they need some young talent on the back end. And at this point, Ross, I would say Yekemchuk is the best player available.
I would say so. Beckett Seneke, though, right there, too.
Yeah, I mean, you could convince me either way. I actually think I might have voted Seneke on that. So you can go either way, and I don't think it's a bad pick.
Hilarious mistake by me here. San Jose Sharks pick Adam Jiricek. If you're watching on YouTube, I accidentally put his older brother, David Jiricek, who went 6th overall last year. So Adam Jiricek at 14. Makes sense, right? We talk about Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini and William Eklund, right? They've really focused on forward in their rebuild. So to go out and get, at this point, the best defenseman available, although what have we had? 8 defensemen in the first 14 picks, it feels like. So it's almost like a bit of the scraps, but Adam Jiricek going into the year was probably going to be a top 10 pick if he had continued to develop. He missed a lot of the year after suffering a season-ending injury at the World Juniors. So that would be potentially a nice steal here for a right shot defenseman in Adam Jiricek. And then coming in at number 15, and this just, I mean, it is the most Detroit Red Wings pick ever. Michael Brandseg-Nygaard and Pilsy. A great comment here. I actually want to click through it and give credit to the comment. We got to scroll through all this. Oh, where was it? Someone said I would pay to see Brandseg-Nygaard's name on the Red Wings jersey because it's already a very circular back. That thing would go from one side of his butt to the other.
Yeah, I mean, big name and a big player. Yeah, I agree.
Plays big. He plays real big.
This is such a Red Wings pick. Very similar to Casper, who they selected recently. So I think this makes a lot of sense for the Red Wings.
To see the rest of our mock draft, your mock draft, this is the people's mock draft. You can go check out on YouTube in the description or just head right to our Twitter at Sens Central. Pilsy, another fun exercise. The next time we're doing a mock draft, it's going to be the whole 32 picks. It's going to have special guests, and we're very excited to bring that to you the week before the draft.
Yeah, that is our masterpiece, our final mock drafts. It's going to be hours long. The other ones we did were 3 hours and 4 hours long.
Dude, the last year's one was 5.5 hours. It was a bit egregious, but we do put timestamps in there for each player or each team discussed. And with all our special guests, we do a bit of an interview leading into what their picks are. They make the picks too. It's not on us. It's on our guests.
Yeah, exactly. So don't get mad at us. You had your chance to get mad at us. Not anymore.
We bring them into our home and we put them to work.
Exactly.
On our mock draft. So go check that out. That'll be a YouTube exclusive, a 5-hour audio podcast. I don't know. We're going to have graphics. It'll be a bit of a presentation. So
Big time.
wait for that. Check it out on YouTube, June 23rd. Calling it now, June 23rd-ish. But I like a nice Sunday morning drop, eh?
Well, Ross, you got to give the people enough time to actually sit down and watch this. So we got to give it nice and early.
Love that. All right, Pillsy, let's get to some draft rankings. We've got 2 defensemen and a forward that Feisty, I think, just begins to describe the style that he likes to play. So that's coming up next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is the ultimate ticketing app. If you want to get tickets to the NBA Finals, that's coming up here. If you want to get tickets to the NHL Conference Finals, you can do that on Game Time. Or maybe you're sitting here being like, well, I want to do something that's a little more fun for the rest of the family. Maybe not everyone's into sports. Don't worry. Concerts, comedy, theater. You can also find tickets on Game Time. Game Time has killer last minute deals. They got all in prices, views from your seat, and lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Look, you want to go to a game and you want to know your seat is going to be as advertised. Game Time gives you the view of your seat. And if you're looking on your phone, I love this about Game Time. You can move your phone around like this and you get the panoramic view. So not like some other websites where they try to show you the best view of that seat. And then just to the left, there's a massive pole so you can't see the other end zone. No, not with Game Time. You're going to know exactly what your seats look like, and they're going to make sure that you have the best price. If you want to go on a last minute decision, they got you. If you want to find flash deals, zone deals, you can do that with Game Time. You can save up to 60% buying last minute tickets for your events. You can get the lowest price guaranteed in this economy. That's clutch. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find cheaper tickets in the same row and section. And the Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is coverage with the most flexible customer service policy in the industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
Today's episode is also brought to you by our very good friends at the GLEBE Central Pub. It's a neighborhood pub right in the heart of the Glebe. GLEBE Central Pub for great food, awesome drinks, and an atmosphere for everybody. They've got awesome events at the Glebe Central Pub. You can check out their website, GlebeCentralPub.com, and follow them on Instagram, Glebe Central Pub. Easy handle. Go check them out. They got all the information about the events that are coming up at the GCP. Not only that, I mean, the food's delicious. The smash burger's my go-to. I'm all in on the smash burger. Live music every Saturday. I love that too. Just knowing that if Saturday night, the vibes are high, they're free at the GCP, because they got live music. So go check them out. Go visit them. Glebe Central Pub. Let them know that your friends at Locked On Senators sent you. If you're going down to Lansdowne for whatever, Red Blacks games, shopping, you name it, you're in the Glebe, stop by for a pint and say what up to everybody at the Glebe Central Pub. Visit them at 779 Bank Street and let them know that LOSP sent you. It's the GCP, where the vibes are free at the Glebe Central Pub. All right, to remind you can follow the show on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter, LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. The show is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, coming in at number 38 on our Locked On Senators 2024 NHL Draft Rankings, we're going to the Kamloops Blazers, where we find Harrison Brunick, a right shot defenseman who's very well-rounded.
Ross, this might be Locked On Senators podcast history. I think this is the first time we've ever talked about a player from South Africa. Now, he was born in South Africa, but he does represent Team Canada when it comes to international play. But I just thought that was a very interesting note about Brunick here.
Certainly is. Grew up in Calgary, got to grow up playing for the Royals, one game with the Brooks Bandits, and then it's like, all right, here we go. WHL. So his ascension, and we can get into it points wise, but I do find it very interesting for him. A raw talent coming in at 6'3", 184 pounds. And I just think there's a lot of room to grow. And I think that as he matures, he's going to get a lot of confidence from his coaches. I think that he's the type of player that's going to have like a slow and steady rise. We'll get into more why, but I'll tell you that he's a May birthday. So again, a lot more room to grow. Only ranked by 4 of our entities. This is where it gets stressful. Not by Bob McKenzie. No ranking for Bob McKenzie. So that's stressful. But Elite Prospects loves him. They have him as a first-round talent, 25th overall. McKean's 25 overall. Pronman 45, and Wheeler at 62. Pilsy, what do you like about Harrison Brunick?
I like that he's a well-rounded player. All the scouting reports I've seen, the scouts all seem to agree that he's a well-rounded guy on both sides of the puck. He can use a stick effectively to break up passes, to get in shot lanes, especially with that 6'3" range. He's able to do that in a wide area. He can join the rush on offense. He can put up some points. 10 goals, 11 assists. Sure, 21 points in 49 games doesn't jump out at you, but
the team stunk.
Yeah, the Blazers didn't have their best year, and unfortunately, he did miss the final month of WHL play due to injury. Wheeler mentioned that he got hit from a late hit that knocked him out for the rest of the season in the WHL, but at least he was able to come back and play in the U18 games where he had 4 points in 7 games.
He can skate. There's your number one. A right shot that can skate, defend well. It's going to allow him the chance to sign and turn pro. But I'm a little bit lower. I'm closer to the Wheelers and the McKenzies of the world. I'm a little bit lower on Harrison Brunick. I think there's some pops of offense that if he gets an opportunity, whether it's via trade to a contender next year in the WHL, or he just grabs the bull by the horns and says, hey, let's go. Let's get some victories here and get Kamloops back to respectability. I think that we could see his stock jump dramatically in his draft plus 1 year. So I'm not taking anything away from him with that, but with this slew of defensemen, Pilsy, it feels like of the 40 draft profiles we've done, that it's been like 2/3, if not more, defensemen. There's so many to choose from this year. So I've got this cluster of them right now with Alphonse Frey, Matt Vachervin, Dominic Badinka, that could honestly, going into draft night, change that day. I do think there's this enormous cluster of players that are so close together. It's just basically choose your archetype and then grab the guy who fits that. But in terms of quality, I think these guys are all that like early second round type talent.
Yeah, I'm not as high on Brunick as McKean's and EP are. I can't wait for EP's draft guide to come out and get a better picture of how they view these guys, because 25 seems very high for me for Brunick. So they got to view him as an incredible skater, which I didn't really see any other scouts like falling in love with his skating. Sure, he's a good skater, but I didn't see anyone kind of really touting him as a high elite skater. He's got really nice hands. When he needs to, Ross. We both saw that highlight of the night that he put up where he goes inside out on a player, then scores later. I think this is a guy that he has all the tools. He just needs to find a way to elevate some part of his game to take that next step. And for me, I'm a little lower on him. I think he's going to go in the mid to late second round.
Okay, yeah, and I think Bob McKenzie omitting him off of his top, what was it, a top like 80, didn't he?
I forget how many he ended up doing, but either way, being omitted on Bob McKenzie's list is not a good recipe to be drafted in the first round.
No, it's definitely not, but I do think that there's a project in here that could pay dividends to an NHL player. I just think we might be looking at a third pair defenseman who, in a perfect world, could get some power play time, because there's some pops. Like, there's a couple highlights where you're like, oh, yeah, there's some sneaky skill there for sure, but he's going to have to do it more consistently.
And he's got some snarl to his game, Ross. You don't see very many fights in junior hockey these days. They're really trying to cut down on that, which is probably a good idea with teenage kids. But if there's willing combatants, they'll let him go. And he had 3 WHL fights. Now, the one I watched, he did get beat, but it was a good tilt overall. So he's willing to throw down if it comes to it. So you got a bigger right shot defenseman that can skate and doesn't mind throwing down the gloves once in a while. There's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be attracted to that.
Should the Sens be one of those teams, Pilsy? Right shot defenseman, people get excited.
Yeah, in my opinion, no, Ross. I've got Harrison Brunick at 3 stars, 3 out of 5 stars here. I see what people like in him.
If he's there in the 4th round, Ottawa's got 3 picks.
Sure, 4th round. Okay, we can talk about that. Yeah,
for a guy that's 38th on our rankings.
yeah, we can get into that discussion. However, at pick 39, there's no chance this is the guy I'm going for. And that's no slight on him. I think he's going to be a good prospect, but when there's so many defensemen to choose from, you got to have that one shining attribute that scouts can latch onto and fans can be like, oof, we got a guy that does this better than anyone, etc. So with Brunick, I just don't see that one quality, unfortunately.
And coming off of his injury, he did play with Canada at the U18s, and I was like, oh, 4 points in 7 games plus 11. I was like, oh, that's like he's feeling himself. Okay, you look into it a little bit, and it's a goal and 3 assists, all against teams that had no business winning any games the tournament.
Right.
An 8-1 win over Switzerland, an 11-3 win over Kazakhstan, a 4-0 shutout over Latvia. He was +7 in those 3 games. Hey, still +4 in the other games, but 0 points against US, Sweden, Czechia, and Sweden. So there's a little bit of caution there. But if your team just drafted Harrison Brunick, you can see the path down the road to where he can be a contributing member at the NHL level. And that's why he comes in at number 38 on our Locked On Senators NHL draft rankings. For more, go check us out on YouTube. All right. A reminder, you can follow the show on social media at Sens Central on Twitter, Locked On Senators on Instagram. The show is free and available everywhere, including on YouTube. All right, now back to our draft rankings. Coming in at number 37, we are going to the Russian Junior League, where we find a true superstar with over 100 penalty minutes. It's Igor Surin, an August birthday with plenty of potential.
Yeah, Ross, Igor Surin is a feisty player. I think that's the best way to describe it. And you mentioned all those PIMs that he has. I was looking at his game logs in the MHL, where he played 42 games, had 22 goals, 30 assists, good for 52 points. And this guy puts up so many shots. There was only 2 MHL games out of 40 where he had 0 shots. And one of them, he got 27 PIMs. So either he's putting the puck on net or he's spending time in the box.
He is the funniest player that I've covered so far. He's hilarious. He's always in the mix. He's a high octane player, and he's the kind of guy where you can see the potential, but you also, if you're a coach or a general manager, you're going to have to pull the reins back a little bit. You're going to be like, hey, let's pick our spots a little bit here. We don't have to get into it after every single whistle. Could you imagine this guy and Brady Tkachuk on a line together?
Yeah, it'd be hilarious. But Ross, you know what? I'd rather have a guy where you got to sit him down and say, hey, we need you to calm down a little. Let's pull the reins in, rather than have a guy where like, we got to get you going. What do we need to do to get you engaged? And sure, there's going to be some learning lessons for Surin, and he's going to have to work on his discipline. I saw there was a couple times where he's taking penalties that just aren't necessary. And you can tell he's on edge and frustrated and, letting that shine through lack of composure, we'll call it. And that's something that as a young player, he's going to have to find that line of how he can stay on that edge without crossing the line.
And he throws impact hits. I mean, that's a huge part of his game too. He's physical. He can play. He's obviously a point producer, 52 points. You mentioned the stats are jumping off the page here. And he's still a pretty consistent early second rounder. Like, of all the guys in our ranking so far, the floor to ceiling on this guy is probably the closest we've seen so far. First, let's get to know him. He's 6'1", 192 pounds. He shoots left. He plays center. But for me, he projects as a winger at the NHL level, an energy winger. Like, I think if this guy hits his ceiling, you're looking at like an Ivan Barbashev, that type of player where you're going to get in on the forecheck, you're going to produce, you're going to score some points, but you're going to be a pain in the rear end on the other team. You know what? Sticking with the Russians, you want to go real high end. Pavel Buchnevich would be right up there. It's like a power forward that can shoot, but I like Barbashev as a player comparable. He's going to have to bulk up. That's going to come with his size. He's obviously got the work ethic and the strength, but the rankings, Pilsy. 31 for Pronman, 33 for Button, 34 for McKeens, 41 for Wheeler, 43 for Bob McKenzie, and 54 for Elite Prospect. So we are talking about a player that is really kind of in that range where the Senators pick in the second round at 39th overall. You mentioned the Pims in the regular season. The playoffs, for me, that's when the intensity gets higher, but it's also typically when less gets called. And he still managed to get 30 penalty minutes in 19 games. Oh, but he also had 18 assists and 5 goals. So 23 points in 19 games. Pretty impressive there. But in total, when you're playing, 61 games in a season, you probably don't want 138 penalty minutes in those games. But this guy, he's entertaining. And like, I read an article called he's the troublemaker of the 2024 draft. And it's translated from French, this article, but I actually really like that kind of mantra for him because he's going to be just that. And I think that he's the type of guy I would like to have in my AHL system as soon as possible because you can see the talent, the shot's good, the playmaking's good. Everything is kind of consistent across the board. And obviously the compete level is way up, way up. I want him to be around my other prospects, to be head-to-head competing with them in practice every day, because I think he will not only be a good prospect himself, but he's going to push the people around him to elevate their game as well.
Yeah, and he plays up-tempo game too. Like, let's not just like, obviously his feistiness is a big part of him, but there's so much more to Surin. Like, you don't get 52 points in 42 games amongst your peers out of luck, right? And that's one of the things where I give Surin a lot of grace is he's backing it up. Like, if this was a guy that was just unhinged and he wasn't able to produce, well, maybe you see a bigger issue there, some red flags. But I think if he can rein it in a little, he's going to be effective. I love his shot. He's got a hard shot that's dangerous from mid and long range. The one other knock I would have on him, Ross, is sometimes he likes to get a little selfish where he thinks, all right, I'm just going to make this all happen by myself. I'm going to deke through 3 players, chip pass off the boards to myself to get around a final guy, and then wrap around to beat a goalie, where it's like, dude, you got 4 other teammates there. At the very least, do some give and go passes to keep them in the game, keep them involved, create space for yourself. And I think you could have a lot more success that way too. But when you're a player as dominant as him and as kind of confident and feisty as him, I can see why he's like, screw it. When you want something done, do it yourself. And he's like, I'll just get this done by myself. And that may work when you're a talented guy in junior levels, but it ain't going to fly when he starts getting to the pros. And Ross, he only got 3 KHL games. And a big part of that, I think, is his lack of discipline and ability to play within structure. And really only one of those KHL games he actually got consistent minutes. So if he wants to take that next step, there are a couple things he's going to have to work on.
There certainly is. And we've seen there's a huge discrepancy as well between the top end and bottom end teams in the Russian junior circuit. And Loko Yaroslavl is very high at the top of the list. So they're a team where, like, he's third on his own team in scoring. Now, albeit he played 10 less games than the guy who he was tied with actually for second. But at the same time, like, he's a part of a really good team. Now, in the playoffs, he took his game to a completely different level. He had 9 more points than his next teammate in the playoff run. He's also, though, a bit of a project. Like, I don't think we're going to see him in the NHL in 3 years. I think 4 years would be kind of the timeline that you're hoping that Surin makes enough progress and consistency in his game to get to the NHL level. But he's a prospect I'm pretty high on. Like, I've got him right in this range. And for me, he'd be a target for the Senators at 39. How about you, Pilsy? What do you think about Surin and the opportunity for the Senators to add him to their prospect pool?
So I like Surin as a player. So I'm giving him 3.5 stars here, Ross. I like the talent. I like the feistiness. I love that he has that edge to his game, but I'm worried about the discipline and I'm worried about the selfish play. And I'm
I
worried
thought
about.
you said that you want to pull him back instead of push.
No, that's what I'm saying. I like that. But I'm just worried how long is it going to take for him to realize that? And then it looks like he's slated to start the year next season in the MHL again. Then probably he gets a taste of the KHL. And then a year after that, he's probably playing more time in the KHL. And then at that point, he's maybe looking at a KHL contract. And then you get into this whole situation where it's like, okay, we're looking at 4 or 5 years here before he might be ready to come over and make an impact. Now, I'm not saying that I know that's the case. I'm not a MHL insider, but that seems to be the way that some of these projects go in Russia. And it's not a bad thing if your team can wait to get a guy like this. Unfortunately for the Sens, I don't think it's the right path for them.
Oh, but he's fun. He's fun. If your team just drafted him, you're getting a fun prospect.
Big time. Yeah. That's the thing. I think he could work great for other teams. I just don't think right now where the Sens are, they need to get a guy that they can get into their system, start developing, and see them enter the AHL or the NHL at a quicker pace.
As we continue our countdown, so of all the players we've done on our top 80 so far, I've got him right in between Matvei Gridin and Teddy Stiga. Where do you have him in comparison to those types of players, or who do you have him around in your rankings?
So that's a little high for me. I've got him closer to Lucas Pettersson. Guys, well, we haven't talked about a bunch of the other players I've got him, but I've got him in between Lucas Pettersson and Stian Solberg, right around 41 overall so far.
Okay, he's 40 for me. So we have different players around it,
There we
but
go.
we are kind of similar on Igor Surin, who with an average of 39.3, he comes in at 37 on our Locked On Senators NHL draft rankings. For more prospect profiles, make sure you check us out on YouTube. We have a full playlist dedicated to the 2024 NHL draft. All right, coming in at number 36 on the Locked On Senators NHL draft rankings, this is a rarity. It's an overager, a guy who was passed over just last year, and now he's shot up to the potential of being a late first-round pick. It's Jesse Pulanin, a 6'5", 214-pound left shot defenseman. Simple question: what happened to this guy? Why was he off teams' radars just a year ago, and now he's front and center?
Well, Ross, I'm not sure when he hit his growth spurt, but being 6'6", 216 pounds, this might be a case where he didn't have that size when scouts initially started looking at him. And then maybe he grew into that size, because that is like, he's the biggest player we've profiled so far. No, he's got to be 6'6".
I got him at 6'5",
pounds.
I will say. So we'll see if he's even grown further, but I'm going off Central Scouting. So
all right. Well, 6'5" is still probably the biggest player we've profiled here
so far, because we know we've covered in our mock draft, even at the start of this episode, Anton Siliev, 6'7". Other than that, though, yeah, it's right up there.
Yeah, and just to get his stats here with Liga, he played 29 games, 2 goals, had 6 assists for 8 points. So some good pro experience already for Pulkkinen here. He had 28 points in 18 U20 games. So amongst his peers, he's dominating.
28 points in 18 games?
Oh yeah, like this guy clearly was able to get things going so well amongst his own peers that he was able to jump and play a full-time role in Liga. And then Ross, you're going to love this, in the playoffs in the U20 league, in 7 games, 10 points. So well above a point per game pace as a defenseman, a 6'6" defenseman, 6'5", sorry, Ross, a 6'5" defenseman that's above a point per game pace. There's a lot to like if you're an NHL scout here.
There's so much to like. If you watch his U20 tape, it's a complete joke. Like the way he's manipulating the puck and using his size to protect it and then just ripping shots. He's got an awesome release. Really like what I see out of his breakouts too. And just the poise. I mean, you can tell, right? Like he's an 04 birthday. right? We're talking about some guys who are 06s a little like later on. So he does have that maturity, but I also think that like a team like Vegas or a team like, Colorado, these teams that they're just cycling through, trying to continue to keep their window open further and further, you could see a world where this guy in 2-3 years is playing everyday minutes. And to get that in the second round, I mean, it's kind of a crapshoot no matter what. But at the same time, I mean, I think there's a higher probability of a guy who's further. Now, I also read that he only really started taking hockey seriously, like for a career seriously, after he was passed over in last year's draft. He's like, you know what? I want this. He probably saw all of his buddies get drafted and he wanted a part of that. So he really dedicated himself to the game throughout the offseason. And his real coming out party, Pilsy, was at the World Juniors with Team Finland. He came out of his shell and scouts took notice with his performance at that tournament. He had 3 points and was +6 in 7 games with Team Finland. So through that, he's really kind of taken another step in the second half of his season. And he finished off with that dominant playoffs, 10 points in 7 games with the JYP U20 program. So he's an interesting prospect. If he was a right shot, I'd probably be a little more curious from an Ottawa Senators perspective. But if I'm a team, a fan of a team that just drafted this guy, and my team's a perennial contender, a Boston, I'm thinking, other teams like that, Tampa
I don't even know what I was thinking. Yeah.
I don't know if they have any picks for the next 10 years.
Yeah, true. I don't think they do, actually. Yeah, they're not getting him.
The Panthers, too. Like these types of teams, though, that are every year in the mix, the Rangers, all that. This is the type of player I would target because he still has kind of an elevated potential that's unknown, but he's already at the point where you've seen enough that you're like, okay, I think we can work with this, and sooner rather than later. There's a reason why Bob McKenzie has him at 33 on his list, higher than anyone else. Corey Pronman's at 46, Elite Prospects at 36, Peters at 37, McKean's at 42. And funny enough, he's an honorable mention for Scott Wheeler, but he comes in with an average of 38.8 for us. What are you thinking from a Sens perspective?
Well, Ross, I just wanted to say, too, the thing I like best about Pulkkinen here is that he's so confident carrying the puck, and he uses his size and he pivots to protect the puck. He's got hands to get through poke checks. So this isn't just a big, bulky, rangy defenseman. He's got smooth hands and he's smart as well. So just add that to reasons why teams will be interested in him. I've got him at 3.5 stars, Ross. I think, again, my 3.5 stars usually means I like the player, but I don't like them to be picked by the Sens in that range. Like, they would have to pick him with pick 39, in my opinion. And I just think there's other types of players that they could be looking for. And as a Sens fan, it pains me to say, Ross, but you listed off about half the NHL there, teams that are contenders. I noticed you did not put the Ottawa Senators in that list of teams that are contenders.
I didn't put any Eastern Canadian team in there, obviously.
Yeah, so the Ottawa Senators, unfortunately, probably not the destination here.
Oh, man. Well, for me, I've got him above that cluster of defensemen where I've got Harrison, Brunick, who we just spoke about, Alphonse Frey, Matvei Shervin, Dominic Badinka. I've got those guys all in a row. Jesse Pulkkinen is at the top of that bracket, but he's under Will Skahan for me. I still like Skahan a bit better. Just the assertiveness of Skahan kind of puts him up above. How I just know he's a sure thing on a third pair, and we can work with it. And he's got the strength and conditioning background. He's going to be kind of an athlete. Whereas I think Pulkkinen, there's a bit more risk, but there's also a bit more reward for him as well if he does pan out. But he comes in at 36, and he's a very interesting prospect. The fact that he's an overager as well, I think, plays very, very fondly into his favor as we get nearer to the draft in Vegas. Or maybe your team just drafted him. And if so, have fun with Jesse Pulkkinen, because I do think he's the type of guy where, I don't know, maybe he comes over after his next season in Liga, but he's an intriguing prospect, and you'll enjoy watching his highlights in the U20 League. That's for sure. That is Jesse Pulkkinen. For more, go check us out on YouTube, Locked on Senators. All right, hope you enjoyed today's show. Our draft profiles will continue as we are officially into the top echelon of the second round. This is first round territory, Pillsy. We're ever so close, and I'm really looking forward to getting into that 25 range where the Senators have another pick.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's so fascinating having picks 25 and 39 because you're a fringe first rounder and a fringe second rounder on either side of that coin. So I'm so fired up that we're finally in this range where we can seriously start considering guys for either of those Sens picks.
I'm excited for some more 4-star guys from you. You've been very conservative with the rankings.
Well, let me tell you, I've been doing my homework, and preparation Pillsy is showing up here, and I've prepped ahead. I've got a handful of 4-star guys coming up, so the prospects are about to get good.
5?
5, yeah, probably 5 actually. Yes.
Woo, stay tuned for all that. That's Brandon Pillar. I'm Ross Levitan. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much for watching, listening, liking, subscribing, engaging with the show. It does go a long way. Please support our sponsors as well. GLEBE Central Pub, Farm to Fork, FanDuel, Game Time, all the great sponsors that help us do what we do here at LOSP. Have a great day, everyone. We'll talk to you tomorrow. For Brandon Pillar, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.